Hi, this is Dave Steinberg, and welcome back to the Mortgages Made Easy podcast. I am so delighted to have Patrick Lilly as our guest. Patrick is one of the heroes of the mortgage business. Sorry, let me take that back. Patrick is one of the heroes of the real estate business. He and I were just talking as we warmed up, and he probably coaches 20 to 25 of the top realtors in the country as to how to do business better and smarter. And so I thought we could tap into some of that wisdom, Patrick.
Great. Well, thanks for having me on. You want me to just start talking?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I would say, first of all, studies show that real estate brokers who have a coach and are being coached are much more successful across the board than agents and brokers who do not have a coach. Then the question becomes, well, what's the right coach for you? Because there's so many different types of coaching out there. So for instance, if you're a large team and you're trying to grow your business and to manage your systems and to look for ways of making your agents more successful, and maybe you want to work less, you really need to work with one of the coaches that really does that all the time, that they've got another 15, 20 clients or more that are large teams and they're looking to be more efficient and to grow their business. The needs of a large team are much different from the needs of a small team or a partnership or an individual. So, for example, there's a lot of coaches who focus on large team management. When I say large team, I'll say at least 6 people and above, and they get a lot larger than that. Because their needs are very much different from the needs of a smaller team or a partnership. So that would be the first way I would try to find a coach. The second thing that I would look at is what are my goals, and then try to find a coach that aligns with that. If systems is where you're failing and systems is where you're running short, then let's find a coach who's good at systems. If lead generation is where your problem is, then let's find a coach who has lots of clients who are not having problems generating leads. That's always a good way to decide which coach to go with. And then we're going to talk about, for me, my clients that I do best with are ones that they have their systems in place. They don't need to be held accountable, but their mindset, their thought process is holding them back, that their limiting thoughts or how they're viewing a situation is keeping them back from being the greatest potential that they can be as an agent, as a person. So I found that the coaching clients that I work best with they have all the skills that they need. Maybe they're missing some skills, maybe they're missing some systems, but I need to change the way they think and the way they perceive themselves in the market and their team in order for them to grow. So one, I'm good at that, but two, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to see people change their thought process, because it lines up with what I feel is one of my purposes in life, is to help people make those changes. So you could see, Dave, I think, how that those three things are, those three types of coaches are very different, and some are going to be better than others for you. So, for instance, if you want somebody to hold you accountable, I'm not your guy. I don't want to do it. I'm not interested. I want people who can hold themselves accountable, or that they hire another coach to hold themselves accountable. Let me give you a classic example of somebody who uses all three types of coach. Paula Clark, as you know, Paula is a really great broker in Bergen County in New Jersey. And her team just keeps on growing and growing and growing. She's the top broker in her office now and in her in her MLS. It's been a joy to watch her grow. She has 3 different coaches. She has a coach that works her accountability, her systems, that sort of thing. Then she has the secondary coach who helps run her team for her. And then she has me who comes in and holds their yearly advances. And I meet with them a couple other times of the year to work on getting their heads all together on the same page so that we're working on a common goal. And, what I do really well, but what the other coaches do exceptionally well and do better than I could. And I think Paula's got a really good solution on how to grow her business to reduce the amount of time she works, to help her team make more money across the board for everybody, and for them to reach their goals each year. It's a really smart system of not just limiting yourself to one coach.
Hmm. So, what are some of the issues you think realtors face in 2020?
In 2023, well, I think it's a couple of things. I think it's obviously going to be market by market. We're seeing in the East Coast that the Northeast specifically, the market's still relatively strong. My sales, I also sell real estate. My sales in New York City are really strong, and as is the Hudson Valley. We're seeing Boston is strong. So, and inventory is still down in a lot of those areas. So getting leads, getting good buyers, getting good listing leads is, probably the most important thing across the board. So, but Dave, you could argue that that's always been the most important thing is the quality of your leads and how you're converting them. So I feel like, at least from my perspective with my coaching clients, we're doing a lot of old school stuff, which surprises me because I always like technology and I always like new things. But the things that really seem to be working across the board are direct mail and picking up the phone and calling. And then looking at your relationship to your clients as a consultant rather than as a sales agent, and developing that deep relationship of being a consultant, and really caring about what their needs are as opposed to a short-term sale. I think those are those elements that people are being most successful with. And the last thing I'd say on this topic is don't do what everybody else is doing. Unless you're picking up the phone, please do that. But I don't think everybody's picking up the phone. And I don't think that many people are doing direct mail as I think they should be doing, because it is so successful. But do what other people are not doing, because anything that helps to separate you from the competition is a good thing. And lastly, when you get out into real estate conferences and coaching, there are like a million things you can do to sell real estate to help you improve your business. Don't spread yourself thin. You don't need to be on every social media. You don't need to do everything that Sally, who's in your next MLS system, and she's doing really well. You don't need to do everything that works for her. You need to do what you do well, what you feel good about, and what you can track the numbers that they're turning into conversions on deals. I would say those are my biggest keys for 2023.
And what I like is, and I've observed it in person over the years working together with you, first of all, you do what you preach. I think the first big, huge gap between great realtors and not great realtors is what you said. The fact that a great realtor serves the needs of their client and a not great realtor sells them real estate or sells their real estate. So I love the fact that you come at it as a consultant and you You care about the people first and the transaction second.
One of the biggest things that I've learned, Dave, earlier in my career. So before I was really committed to staying in real estate, I was doing really well, but I was just like, I thought I'd go into some sort of consulting, commercial consulting. And the first 12 years of my career, it was like, what's the least amount of work I can do to get the job done and to move on to the next deal. And then when I decided, no, I was really committing to residential real estate and that I was good at it, and this is my niche. During the subsequent 10 years after that, it was like learning, no, that's not a real rewarding way for me to deal with my clients. It just didn't, it felt very transactional. And that personally wasn't rewarding. I mean, the money was, but the relationships were not. And consequently, some of them, when they went to sell again or buy again, didn't come back to me, which was a real eye opener because, I thought I did a great job, and maybe I did, but I obviously didn't. If they went to somebody else in terms of staying in touch, I didn't. And when I finally realized that this is about consulting versus transactional sales, the quality of my relationships improved. My income improved too, but most importantly, my joy improved. I was really enjoying the process a whole lot more. And when you're happy with what you're doing, you're going to make more money and you're going to be more successful, and people are going to want to be around you more.
Mm. So if you were going to give some advice to, let's say, someone who's 5 or so years in the business, a successful realtor, but they're ready for the next step, what, other than getting a coach, because you said that, but what advice do you have for that realtor?
I'd look at where did the source of their deals come? How did they generate their deals? Where were those leads from? And then figure out, well, that's working. How can I do more of that? How can I put more money or energy into those leads so I can develop more leads similar to that? Because I find people feel like, in general, they've they feel like they've maxed out that sort of thing, and they always look for new sources of leads, and you kind of stretch yourself a little too thin. Look at what works and then try to maximize that and see how you can grow that. I would say a little bit of analysis can lead to a really smart use of your money, budgeting both money and time.
I have told people many times to just go back and identify their 5 favorite clients over the past year or two, and then look at where those clients came from, what the activities were that attracted those clients, and then do more of that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you don't have to do the number analysis that way. That would be a really quick and heartfelt way to get to where to put your energy. But it's kind of nice to have the number analysis too. So it'd be nice, because I suspect they'll support each other.
So, Patrick, would you mind sharing a couple of mistakes that you yourself have made?
Well, I'm glad you said just a couple, because I could do a whole day podcast on that. Look, so let me first say that mistakes are good, in that your greatest learning comes from or has the potential to come from your mistakes. And I believe that strongly. So like, if you're on my team and you make a mistake, I don't ever get upset about it. I really don't. I've made ahead that we all make mistakes, and as long as you learn from it, then I'm cool. If you make this mistake a second time, the same mistake, then we're going to sit down and we're going to I'm going to boost you after the first mistake. On the second one, we're going to sit down and I'm going to say, what happened that you didn't learn from the last mistake? Because I find this disappointing. And I also let them know if the mistake happens a third time, they'll be off the team. Because I want people who can learn and grow. So, we set up the expectation on our team to function that way. And I feel like it's a really healthy, smart way to function, and makes people less frightened of making an error and letting them know that errors are good. In terms of my own mistakes, oh my God, sorry. Hi, let me call you back, okay? Thank you. Sorry about that.
You were up to in terms of my own mistakes.
Yeah. So in terms of my own mistakes, boy, I've made quite a few. Earlier on in my career, every new bauble, every new technology that would come my way, every new, doing something different, I would be the first adapter and I would adapt it and I'd go after it. And thinking, oh, this could be really fun. This will help separate me. This would be something different. And in retrospect, one of the things that I've learned is unless it's a real outlier, being a first adapter is not a good thing. Let's see how other people do with it so you can have some track records, because I spent a lot of money and time on being a first adapter on a lot of technologies and systems that in retrospect was a waste of time, a waste of money, and I wish I hadn't done it. So I'm not sure being a first adapter works for the vast majority of things. There are some exceptions to the rule.
And one of the things I've enjoyed immensely over the years is the Rev conferences. And what I've personally found as a mortgage guy at a real estate conference, but what I've personally found is that the shared wisdom of hanging out with really good people is very, very powerful in your role in pulling Rev together and pulling the Rev community together has been incredibly powerful. Tell us a little bit about your team. How is your team structured?
We are down to 2 people now. So I have consciously, at my biggest, I was at 6. This is fascinating, Dave. So when my team was at my biggest and we were doing our biggest production, we were doing about our biggest year, I think it was 112 million. And we had several years over 100 million. And I had between 6 and 7 people on my team. This past year, we had 2 people on my team. And
just to be clear, it's you plus 1 or you plus 2?
Jasmine, me plus 1. And we did between 60 and 70 million this past year. You can imagine my profitability is much higher than when I was doing, over 100 million. And one of the reasons I know that is because I just saw my tax bill. I have to pay. It's a lot of money.
Paying taxes is a good thing. It means
exactly. And the trouble is, it sits in your account while you still have it. You have to realize that's not really my money. So we've got it down to now that I've gotten to the point where I'm really, and I do this with my coaching clients, I'm really interested in profitability and the best use of my time. So, when I'm at 100 million plus, I'm always on the list of the top brokers in the city. At my level now, at 60 million, I'm not going to be on those lists anymore. But the fact of the matter is I'm making more money, I'm happier, and I don't need my ego fed like I used to need it when I was earlier in my career. So I'm really big on looking at profitability. And I think that's, you go through certain stages in your life. And for me earlier, it was important for me to reach that $100 million number. At some point I realized, it's just a number. It doesn't really it makes me feel good about myself, and it makes me other people say, oh, he's a top broker. But I wish people would look at their net numbers, and you'd see how many people over 100 million are making less than me. So it's interesting.
Mm. And I think at the end of the day, that's a very powerful thing, because what I'm hearing you say is that you've reached a level in your career where you're pursuing your joy,
Yes.
and you're serving your clients profitably without putting as much focus on the ego piece.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm also willing to, if I'm finding a client to be difficult and they're being unreasonable in their difficultness, is that a word? I'm very quick to let them go. I want to treat them as they want to be treated, but I want them to treat me with the same respect.
I get it.
And I got plenty, I have the, as opposed to a new agent, I got plenty of money in the bank. So, I don't need that next deal.
Mm-hmm.
I would like the next deal, but I don't need it. And it makes a difference in my relationship with my clients.
So let's get down to the closing, and let me say, give me 2 or 3 takeaways for that realtor who's 5 years into their career. They've learned the ropes and now they want to grow. What are 2 or 3 things you would tell that realtor?
Well, from this conversation, number one, I'd look at your profit. I'd look at where your leads are coming from. What's the profitability on each lead, meaning what's the overall dollars earned, and what was the cost of those dollars earned? And you only have to do this once a year. This is not, I mean, you can just put it into an Excel program or a Google Doc and have it all figured out for you. But I would be aware of that, and then look at the cost of a lead and what's going to generate the greatest profitability for you, and move ahead from there. So I'm finding that most of my coaching clients that are highly profitable are doing, they have like 65 to 75% profit on their gross income, which a lot of brokers, it's just reverse. It's like 33% profit. And so that would be number one. Number two, I would say, look at what brings you joy. You're gonna, whatever brings you joy, do those things. And then if some of the other things are really not bringing you joy, can you delegate them or shift them off to somebody else from the outside to do them? And if you can't do that, if you still need to do things that you find are unenjoyable, see if there's a way you can turn it into a game and make it fun. Like, give yourself treats if you do X, Y, and Z. And then, as we talked earlier throughout this, hire a coach. And it doesn't have to be a big commitment. You can hire them if you don't have if you're a little tight on money, you can hire it one on a, like, every 2 or 3 weeks, or even once a month if you want to. And also, if you're an individual and you haven't hired an assistant to help you with administrative stuff and running around, that's your really first big item to grow, is having an assistant where you can delegate non-productive dollar behaviors to.
Yeah, I love that. I often tell my clients or my realtor friends to think about things in terms of the value of an hour of their time.
Yeah.
So many people don't stop to think that. What's an hour of your time worth? Is it worth $25 an hour, or is it worth $500 an hour? And if you
Yeah,
treat your time,
it's a simple thing. Look at what your gross income is, divide by the number of hours you think you work in a year, and that you come your daily rate. So let's say it's $250 an hour. You know, is it worth you faxing a contract to somebody at $250 an hour, or is it worth having an assistant do that? And, that's a pretty obvious one. And are things like, well, what are things that are worth $250 an hour? Well, generating leads is worth it. Getting on the phone and generating new buyers or talking to your sphere of influence is worth it. Negotiating contracts of sale. It may be worth it to show high-end property. It may not be worth it to show low-end property. It's the items that you need to figure out are what are a good use of your time. So like even something like, I found that holding luxury open houses, which so many brokers don't want to do an open house, they have such a bad attitude about them, is a really good use of my time, because clients are going to see, or buyers are going to see, all these open houses, and usually the head broker is not there on the team. It's one of the lower agents, and you can tell the difference just from experience. So when they see me working an open house and how I'm dealing with everybody, they get an idea who I am. I can't tell you how many listings I've gotten by doing that, and how many buyers I've gotten, because they're like, oh, this is different. This is somebody that's the next step up. So again, that's worth my time, where other agents might look and say it's not worth their time.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I really appreciate it. I've always found you to be a wise friend, and we look forward to continuing with this conversation. This has been the Mortgage Made Easy podcast, and thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.